Welcome to the InnerVerse. It's an illusion. InnerVerse Swapcast.
Chancy Poo, BioCharisma podcast with fresh tea, Negro Damas. Oh, look at the props.
Check this out. I just want this in the room.
Look at that, y'all. What is this?
Red quartz. So it's quartz with iron druzy on the outside of it.
Iron drizzle.
My nizzle.
Get some drizzle up in that mug. Some little iron oxide.
Yeah, I love that piece for using on the tuning table. It reminds me, it's the root chakra piece now.
Ooh.
It kind of reminds me of like a hip bone.
Yeah.
I don't know why I think that.
Or a vag.
That too. It's in the right spot for that. It's in the perfect spot for
A
that.
nice little perineal shot.
And got some celestite, to help open up the gravy portal. And this is to protect us from tacos.
Awesome. So we had a pre-production
Oh, I didn't
meeting.
get the lighting on though. You keep talking. You keep talking.
A pre-production meeting for the BioCharisma podcast. We're talking about the dreaded taco. A taco is you could call it an etheric sabotage. It's just right when the gravy is getting so thick, but your ladle is too small. A taco will come in and completely thwart the efforts of your higher self to realize you. So everybody needs some good friends. Like I have Chance as a good friend to help with the taco meter. So if either of us...
It's going to be a serious taco if our knees are touching while we're trying to talk.
That's hot. We were discussing the bromance. Whenever you have Thor's tuning fork, I'm sorry, it's just unbelievable. That just keeps going.
It just keeps going. I barely hit it. It was a baby hit.
That's so nice.
Yeah, man.
What frequency is this?
384.
And what does that correspond to?
It's a G note.
Ooh, the fifth.
Yeah, man.
That's so nice.
If I could only have one, now's the one.
Yeah.
You get it.
Yeah.
Because all the other parts of the energy field can express through the throat.
Definitely.
But if you got a bottleneck, you're fucked.
Apparently, that's what makes you a manifester in the human design.
Really?
Your heart is connected to your throat. That's the only prerequisite. Did you ever get into human design?
Just enough to know I'm a manifesting generator.
That's right, yo. You're beneath me. Beneath me.
That makes no sense. How am I beneath you?
No, I'm kidding. No, I need as many manifesting generators in my life as possible as being a pure egoic manifester.
Me and Jenny are both MGs.
So you guys get a lot done then.
Yeah, and it happens quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, the time lag between having an idea to do something and actually doing it is really short.
Yeah, manifesting generators to me, out of all those groups that I've ever seen in human design, as a group, gets the most done. Yeah.
Cool.
Generators will do more busy work, but manifesting generators just have this propensity, this ability to actually do work that more people are affected by. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so is it also a thing where you don't waste effort so much? What I mean by that is like, I'm really good at minimal input, maximum effect. That makes sense. Like, I'm not someone that just agonizes over the details. I'm just like, I just make a decision and go for it. And you know, the quicker route, not necessarily, you know, lazy way, but I'm just curious if that is part of it. That may be more my Aryan nature.
Yeah, I think that might be more of your, because I've been around a lot of manifesting generators that have tremendous influence, but they're not efficient.
I'm not efficient with all my time, but like on project, you know, I just make it happen quicker.
Maybe on project. I mean, I have quite a few, like as a subsect to like actually look at.
Cool.
But you guys get a lot done. Us manifestors absolutely need manifesting generators because you're the only people that can really understand us and don't think that we're complete assholes.
I'm having some dip.
Oh, shit!
It's calamus.
Oh, you're going to pour some tea for us.
Yeah, I'm just letting it steep, get a lot of that Blue Lotus going.
Ooh, tell the people what's in the tea.
I've never had it before, so it could get weird.
This is your Jim Jones tea? Drinking the Kool-Aid? get a little weird in
We
here?
talked about Blue Lotus on one of the episodes of Vibrant where Kyle and Michelle were breaking down herbs for astrology signs.
Yes.
And Blue Lotus is supposed to like open you up to, I don't know, higher realms, something like that. It's supposed to enhance dreams. And have you seen what it looks like?
I have.
Yeah.
I have.
So we talked about that. I'd never tried it. Yeah, you know, I think it's like borderline trippy, but I didn't put a shitload in there.
Have you ever drawn a lotus mandala?
Drawn one?
Yeah, because I've seen you're an artist. For those of you that don't know, my guest today is Chance Garton.
Oh, we're going to introductions.
Chance is my man. He's part of the reason why I got back into podcasting. I started listening to you a little over 2 years ago now. And
I didn't know I was part of the reason you got back into it.
well, I was just
Flattery, my friend.
I was so impressed. I was just so impressed with one, your content, but two, your production value. And you were able in multiple pods to like actually follow a thread. You weren't like some people out there that are really popular where you would bounce. Like you actually had a thread that you were following. I could feel the thread. And so, yeah, man, I
wonder if that's a function of how I go about picking guests for the show. I don't seek them out. Only if I'm authentically on my own interested in the person and investigating their work for my own reasons will I go and ask somebody to come on. Other than that, it's like sometimes it gets a little hairy, like the schedule is looking light.
Yeah.
You know, who's going to be on next? But it's a trust thing.
Yeah.
And I follow that. That's part of what gives me the thread.
Yeah.
In a way. And also I do, I guess, have a thread of like things I investigate and I try to bring it all together and make sense of it as a single everything is everything soup. But that's really the way that I operate, probably to some degree like slows the growth of the show compared to some people who go seek out names to have on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wait till it comes to me or I run into them in a synchronistic way. And to me, that's been an awesome part of the journey.
Or you have somebody badgering you, say, hey, you, hey, you do a good job. Hey, I want to talk to you. We were just talking about that earlier about like the different times of how sliding into the DMs.
Apparently that's something he does.
Yeah, I'm kind of notorious now in the internet pod community of like going in and just I share my appreciation.
That's good though. We're just joking with you, man.
No, I know. Trust me. There's nothing that I don't.
Once I got to know you, it's a huge flattery that you were interested in my work or found it valuable because you have such a wide knowledge about.
Well, you just said
stuff.
it, and I just picked up what it is that I actually like about you. Just now, I figured out what it is, and it's trust. It's the trust because not many people really trust. They talk about trust. The trust is a is a nice, like, flowery new age thing to say, but their actions don't actually show trust or faith. Their actions are that of fear of, like, I'm the one who's going to provide everything for me and I have to figure it out. And I can actually feel that vibe in you of, like, no, you actually really do trust. And so there is this flow that comes with that. When you understand, when you're in jurisdiction with your creator and you understand that that's the provider, you're just kind of like directing where the provisions go. Man, life opens up. And I can feel that in your, in like, even when you're getting into dark, hairy shit, it doesn't matter. Because you trust. There is trust. And it comes through in the work that you do.
Cool. Yeah. I feel that. I trust in a lot of ways. I mean, my entire way of making a living is based on a bunch of random small income streams that may or may not come through for many months between payments.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it always, there's always enough. If there is a mantra to live by, it's that there's always enough, there always will be enough.
Yeah.
As long as you're not wasteful and self-sabotaging, I guess. Mm-hmm. And what's funny is you can even be like that and you'll still have enough.
Absolutely.
Life is not this game of mathematical input and output where you have to correctly estimate the amount of resources you receive and the amount of resources you spend. I know that sounds crazy. And it's not like there's no value or wisdom in budgeting or planning. I'm not saying that, especially if you have a clearly defined goal. But I'm talking about resources like air, food, water, shelter.
Right.
Like, you're in your own mind right now, people. Like you're already in the most sheltered place you could be.
Yes.
And the most resource abundant, infinite place you could be. You're in your mind. Your body's in your mind, your home is in your mind, your environment is in your mind. So
get into that, because when you say you're in your mind, I know the majority of people think their mind is in them.
Yeah.
So kind of back out a little bit. Give a bird's eye view of what you mean when you say that.
I got to pour the tea first.
Oh yeah, pour the tea. Get the Blue Lotus going.
We got to get it cooling off so we can actually start sipping if we want to go here.
So Chance is the host of the InnerVerse podcast. He does Vibrance every Wednesday. He has Slick Dissident, who's, essentially always into placentas.
Schizo Dissident.
He got the homunculologist on the speed dial. Got all these folks that are, very, I guess you would say, from my perspective, earnest in their pursuit of what truth is.
I do my best. The ones that aren't honest and earnest, they reveal themselves eventually. And then
this is true.
Then you stop seeing them on my stream.
This is true.
Yeah, there's totally a stable of legends that I'm able to call on for shows. I appreciate that.
Oh, that's delicious.
I like having a cast of characters, a recurring cast of characters.
Yeah.
You're one of them. You're a main one.
Yeah.
People celebrate whenever you come on.
Except last time, nobody called in.
Oh,
I was totally shot down. I was like, oh, nobody loves me anymore.
No,
I'm too diffuse.
You mean like nobody joined us on screen?
Yeah.
Oh.
No, not joined on screen. You made a comment that nobody called in. You're like, oh, usually people call in.
Really? I made that comment? I don't know.
It might have been with Longo.
I think it must have been with Longo.
Okay.
I haven't been pushing people to make voice messages or call in lately. I should, though. That's a fun element. Yeah, so what was the question? We were talking about the body, the mind.
The mind. Like, so you said we are in our mind, not the mind is in us. Please elaborate on that.
Well, that's the simple truth is your mind is not in your body. Your body is in your mind.
What is mind?
It's the floor. It's the ground. I mean, that's what I think. I think like all philosophy or mysticism or cosmology, whatever, has got to be built on a foundation. And that foundation is beyond provability usually for most philosophies or most cosmologies. But as in my opinion, using mind as the ground for your philosophy, to back up the statement, like the Big Bang, right? The ground of that philosophy is that initial moment of hyper-compression of everything into a single point and then exploding outward, right? Mm-hmm. Or, any philosophy requires like a belief that is the foundational belief, and then everything else works off of that as an assumption. Mm-hmm. But your mind as a foundation, as a ground, is the only one that you can experientially prove to yourself with your own perception. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a safe bet. Mm-hmm. If it's the only one that you can functionally use as a ground for a cosmology and philosophy, then it's probably the right one.
So
because everything you experience through the interface of mind, and like everything you know about your body, you experience through your mind. Looking at your hand, look down at your knee, your legs. Where are you seeing it? Where are you perceiving it? Where are you feeling it? It's in the mind. So even though we have our awareness is mostly centered from the head, and it feels like the mind must be in the head somewhere, mm-hmm. but that's not true. The mind is distributed throughout the entire field of not just your energy field, your aura, but the entire field of the entire thing.
Yes.
And a way you can be aware of that is how your mind has an effect on what ripples go out and return to you in mm-hmm. the external world and the type of experiences and people that you receive. But that doesn't feel right to people that are in such a level of denial and distraction that they don't notice the resonance between inner world and outer world. Mm-hmm. And it's really probably like the most helpful switch you can do in life that will lead you to all kinds of other switches to realize that the outer world does not lead your inner world, no matter how much you want to pretend it does. Mm-hmm. Your inner world is directing the outer world. Mm-hmm. Always has been. And I don't know, where do you want to go from there?
So I had many years, and still to this day, I practice this practice that, for lack of a better term, or lack of a better descriptor, is known as Vedanta Advaita. It's like the non-dual thought, or non-dual observation. That's a better way of saying it. And so in that, mind is seen as any activity. Like your mind is activity. That's what mind is. And your sentience begets your awareness, and your awareness is part of your mind.
So sentience meaning feeling.
Sentience is prior to that. Sentience is what allows that to be there. Sentience is, for all lack of, the way I experience it is like your tether to eternity. That's like your silver cord, okay. your Sushumna. It's there and it's God-given. It's not of your doing. And
when I'm talking about mind, I'm kind of oversimplifying a term that has nuance, obviously.
Yes.
Which is why it's good that you're starting to get into more defined terms, because when I say mind, some people are going to think what I'm feeling. Some people are going to think what I'm thinking.
Right.
Some people are going to think maybe something else entirely with mind. So
mind, like, to simplify it from my perspective, mind is activity. And so there's an aspect of self that is non-active. It just is. And its isness observes all these other things. Once it starts to observe, then it is in the realm of mind.
Because that's an action.
Yes.
Okay, well, in terms of how you're describing that, I would go ahead and say the isness is the ground more than mind. Mm-hmm. That's the ground below mind itself. Mm-hmm. But in terms of...
What's the deal with ISIS, by the way? Because I know you know all this stuff. Like... Is. Like, what is ISIS? Like, what's the cosmology behind that?
The cosmology behind ISIS?
So what's the story behind is? ISIS?
It's Jesus.
Ah.
It's Jesus without a J.
Yeah, Yeshua ben Joseph.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's...
Yahawashai.
Whenever you see that phonetic, like Isa, that Isa
Isu. Isa. Yeah.
Isu, Esau,
Esau.
the guy with the hairy arms, with the evil brother.
Yeah.
I mean, the Grabbler brother, who was like held up to be the good guy after he cheated his brother out of the inheritance.
Terrible.
But yeah, that's the phonetics there. It's ISO, Isa, ISIS. You know, with the S at the end, that's really more of a Latinized termination. And I doubt that whoever was living in Kemet at that time was probably using that name. In fact, there's really good reason to believe that we don't know shit about shit regarding ancient Egypt, and that the Rosetta Stone, the magic key to the Egyptian hieroglyphs.
Grant me one miracle.
Really good reason to believe that that's a forgery. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then again, you know, there's even reason to believe that the paintings on the tombs, the hieroglyphics themselves, were added at a much more recent date. And not at the same time that those things were even built. So there's tons of grabble in Egypt, but suffice to say, Isis is the mother who is her own son, and marries her own son, who becomes the father to her son and is her husband. The 3-in-1.
So
just like Jesus, the mother. It's Eve. It's Jesus. It's all of that. Think about like other versions of the name. Eve means life. That's what isness is. You know, existence.
Existence.
We're talking about what you're talking about. We're talking about what you're talking about. That which is and is unchangeable and is beyond and before the realm of activity and form and change. Yeah. So that's like, you know, that's not the satisfactory answer if you wanted the mythology with Isis as a name of a character. But like that word is, the Arabic name for Christ is Isa. The Norse pantheon, the top gods of the Aesir, it's the same phonetic, just with an R at the end. The Etruscan name for God was Iser, or similar to Aesir. And yeah, Jesus, Yeshua, Isaiah, you know, it goes on and on. There's tons of examples of this, but you got to be able to have the philological chops to see the way that this very same name isness, the is.
Now, speaking of philological chops, you have more patience with going through all these different languages and talking to other people like Dylan Secotio that just have like this dying ability to look at all these words and change syllables and like find the throughput line and all of this stuff. I'm a retard. So like within a few minutes of you guys talking about that stuff, I literally am like, you know, Charlie Brown. I'm just here, wah, 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 wah. And it's not that I don't want to hear it.
It breaks my heart, Topher.
I actually feel like I have, I don't know if I ever told you this, but I got clocked in the back of my head right on my...
Oh no, the mail slot. Right in the mail slot.
What's the mail slot? How do you say that?
Well, most biofield tuners I know, when they get the intuition, the info comes in. Yeah. It comes in through the back, like the top of the spine, base of the neck spot right here.
So I got hit just above the occiput. I got hit right there.
Ooh.
Right on that line. Yeah, I got nailed with a bar. Somebody jumped me.
How dare them?
Yeah. And so...
How long ago?
When I was 16, but I was pretty much fluent in Spanish, and then I lost it. I couldn't even speak English for like 8 months. I was slurring my S's.
Whoa.
Yeah. That year, for me, my sports were really down. Like, I was an all-state guy as a sophomore, and then my junior year, I had a really down year. But back then, nobody knew about concussions. And if they did know about it, I wasn't in the field of people that knew about it. But, like, I feel like I have a retardation when it comes to hear, like, because I think I overhear. I hear so much that I just kind of go into overwhelm and shut down. So that part of me, I know there's scar tissue there. Like, I've had MRIs done on it and seen the scar tissue there. I don't want to hold that. Like, I'm not going to hold that as an excuse. I just know, like...
Yeah, you heard me tisking you, like... in my head, I was like, but Topher, we're talking about everything's in your mind.
No, I understand. I'm just saying, like, I literally, for me, at this moment, I do feel like I have an energy... I only have so much energy that I can actually give to something. And I'm like, I'm going to leave it to you, or I'm going to leave it to Dylan. I'm going to leave it to the guys that are really into it, because for me, I'm not.
Well, that's just life, you know?
Yeah.
You can't master every field. But the upside of, like, why am I so into Dylan Sakoshio's work? Why do I like his work so much? Why do I give a platform to him as often as he wants to bring information to the audience, you know? And apart from the fact that he's just become a really good friend of mine, and he's one of the most, like, loyal and good people that I've ever formed a relationship with online, which that is absolutely true. Love that guy for tons of reasons. But his work, it shortcuts the process of knowing the code, if you will, the code to the matrix. That's what Seven Bomar called it when he wrote a similar work, but it was just, his version of it was just a bit too schizophrenic. And, you know, he has spent years trying to bring that type of stuff forward in video format instead. And he does a great job too. I like him a lot. But Dylan's work shortcuts the process by showing you, like, specific patterns in like starting with symbolism and astrology, and then in later books going into the philology side of it, so that you can, there's actually not that many threads in terms of the pattern. The pattern is pretty basic. The system is what he calls it. There's a system to priestcraft, there's a system to language. And once you have enough of the keys to that pattern internalized, then whatever you look at, you're just like, oh, I see it. I see this part of the pattern is expressed in this. So it's actually pretty simple, but it is like learning a language, but it's like learning the language of language.
Which is great, because that's what I'm into. I don't want to teach people what to think. I want to teach them how to think.
Yeah, and that's why I like his work. Even, you know, he and I don't have all the same perspective on conclusions regarding things, or, like, you know, I might entertain ideas that he would be hesitant to because he likes to go for hard evidence or no claim, which is respectable. But that's what it is essentially. That's what I say it's a shortcut, but it's actually just teaching you how to think about these things, or opening up your ability to interpret it for yourself and not need someone else to tell you what it means. And then, like, that won't work for you, though. Like, his work isn't going to give it to you completely. You have to examine the pattern in the way that he shows it to you, and then start, you know, pick up some books on esoteric subjects or mythology or whatever, and then let that be your practice round to, you know, like, this books like this, you know, you want to get the old shit, like The Origin of Pagan Idolatry from George Faber. I think this book is probably a 1600s book. It's, you know, and read what the thinkers were. You really want to read what thinkers were saying about these subjects in the age before movies and video games. Right. Because the Disneyfication of mythology has really started to, like, set things apart from each other in a way, and accentuate the cultural nuance or cultural differences between versions of a story that is essentially the same story. And that's all well and good, but then you get that also generates the special boy mentality around whatever chosen cult that somebody might want to follow, where, you know, they're all fine with you disputing the other people's cults or originality, but as soon as you go to show them that, like, hey, the Norse runes are actually Punic, Punic as in Phoenician, then, you know, all of a sudden that's, like, for some people, meltdown status. but that's not hurting anyone's culture. That's what is always like, that's what the biggest pushback you get for doing this type of syncretism work to reveal the universal priestcraft system is the pushback about, oh, you're just trying to make everybody the same, or you just see the sun in everything. Everything's the sun, everything's the sun. And I'm like, no, there's multiple ways to interpret symbolism, you know, especially in the everything is everything mentality. I'm like, I see the northern pole symbolism and stuff. But that's, you know, that's a more speculative thing. You know, I think it's there, but the solar symbolism is definitely there. But we're not challenging what, like, you know, is what's silly to me is how the pushback comes about the specialness of my culture is being challenged because of you showing how it's the same system.
They took our gear.
Yeah, but you know, is that really the cultural thing that you want to be identified with? Is the religious system, or like, you know, is it the culture of being a good person, the culture of how you grow your food, or what type of animals you have husbandry with? Or
People want to identify with their heroes. Everybody wants to externalize the authority.
Yes.
We were talking about this over dinner.
Yes.
And it's quite obvious if you challenge somebody's hero, you're in a world of hurt with them. They don't want their heroes to be challenged. So I don't think it's culture. I don't think people are attached to culture. Culture is a wonderful way of saying their hero worship.
Thank you. Yeah, you nailed it. That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
There goes my hero. I love that song. To this day, get a good pump. You can play that, you know, good jam. You know that song, right? Did I know it? Yeah.
I must have missed that when I was riding with you. It was between the Miley Cyrus.
Well, I've never heard her, and my wife knows because I'm like, I hear these women sing, and I'm like, is that a dude? Is that a woman? And Miley Cyrus sounds like she smokes a lot.
I'm sure.
Yeah. I've only seen like.
We don't need to talk about that.
Yeah.
Just busting you.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I'm so out of tune with what's going on. But so I want the throughput line with what you've seen, because the way I've studied this stuff isn't through language. I studied it through statistics. So like my background, like I guess you would say like my most academic side of things was economics. And economics to me was like this incredible way of learning about consciousness. And I had the blessing of having some really cool professors that were like, you know, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, things aren't the way you think they are.
Alconomics.
Yeah, precisely. And I was friends with Tracy Twyman, and like I loved her book, you know, Money Grows on the Tree of Knowledge.
Yeah, that book's incredible.
Yeah.
I just sent my copy to Homie Romy of the Rising from the Ashes podcast.
I gotta resurrect those podcasts I did with her. We did a bunch. She was really cool. I miss Tracy. She and I would nerd hard back in the day. But anyway. Yeah,
I think I would have hit it off with her if I was.
She would have really around. Dug your work, because she was hitting on things, you know, years back where she allowed epiphany. You know, she would get just enough information, and then she would write her fictional work in that, you know, liminal space between die-hard research and then being a creative. That liminal space, she would have these insights. And I'd get like this crazy email from her being like, da-da-da-da-da-da. Like, yes, let's talk about it. Like, it was awesome, because I find like we were talking earlier about being a manifesting generator. It's like that perfect combination of like, okay, I can be very resolute, read a book from somebody from 400 years ago, have the patience to read it, and then have the energy on the other side to be creative, you know, so the energy is now looping. And in that loop current, then you actually have that liminal space open, and then bam, the creativity comes. I call it spontaneous genius. I think all genius is spontaneous.
I totally agree. That's the reason I do that show occasionally, The Marvelous Demystifiers.
That show is so good.
Where we break down the Marvel superhero movies.
But I can't watch any of that stuff.
That's fine. But my interest in it is how, regardless of like what you feel about superhero movies or the grabble that is Disney, that many creative people working together to bring a project to life, it just invites things to seep through the veil.
Definitely.
Even the intentional programming that's going into it. The reveals that will be in there are, I'm often on the fence about like, is that in there on purpose or not? No, the one that is my favorite example that I've used a few times before, but I want to give it now, is we covered the Avengers movie, the first Avengers movie. At the beginning of the movie, they have, they're showing this secret Black Ops government project where they're researching the cube.
The Tesseract.
The Tesseract, right? The four-dimensional cube. And the name of the project, the secret government lab, is Project Pegasus. And I'm like, motherfucker, that's the Pegasus Square.
Yeah, right there.
The constellation in the sky, the Pegasus Square, that is the entire reason why the Ark, in like the Ark narrative, Noah's Ark, is said to be square. Or it's the entire reason why the New Jerusalem in the Book of Revelation is described in the dimensions of a cube. It's the Pegasus Square. So like, they know, they're winking to you right there. I feel like that was my example of like, okay, that can't just be, maybe it is. Maybe they just pulled the name Project Pegasus out of a hat to call it that. But I'm telling you, like, they are hip to astrotheology. Somebody that is producing that content.
Or the energies that are sponsoring them are hip to it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it could be either one. The point is that you can still derive them, you can still pull the epiphanies out of the creation that came from that liminal space of so many minds in a network.
Definitely.
Generating.
Because then you have an array.
Yeah.
And just like any antenna array, like the larger your array, the further distance and time and space you can go.
Yeah, and most parts of that array are just thinking, they're just doing one little piece in a compartmentalized way, thinking, I'm just going to try to make this look as cool as possible, or like what would be the most mind-blowing thing. And somehow through that, you get stuff like, like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Is that on purpose that it came out around Mother's Day in Taurus season, and that initial Multiverse of Madness is mom, and the whole plot is about the Scarlet Witch becoming evil and going crazy because she wants to be a mom, and she isn't a mom in this universe, but she is in a parallel universe. And like the whole thing is just a big Disney hit piece against moms. But there's so many things that come through in the occult synchromistic realm from those movies that just flies right over people's heads, and it's fun to use them as an example of how people can get the symbolic literacy and practice their symbolic literacy on films like that.
So I wanted to clarify earlier when I said I can't watch those movies. What I'm saying is I can't watch them after I listen to you guys. So I did that with the Moon Knight, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun one.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
The Moon Knight, because I think when the Marvelous Demystifier that you did for the first one of that was like 3 hours.
We went hard
on the
Moon Knight.
first scene.
Yeah. Well, the first scene was so full of stuff, dude. It was crazy. The first scene was just like astrotheology out the ass.
It really was.
And that's another clue to, there's like an unwritten rule in occultism that the most energy in a harvest is the first fruit. And so that applies to decoding movies and TV shows, that the very first thing they show you in an episode, but especially the very first thing they show you in the very first episode, it's gonna carry some serious multi-layered gravy that is...
You were doing that with, we brought that up earlier, Twin Peaks, the show Twin Peaks, right?
Oh man, it's been forever since I watched that. That one's a trip.
Because in Twin Peaks...
Moon Knight's a 6-episode series with the episodes ranging from like 40 to 50 minutes.
Yeah.
And I think overall, the amount of time it took us to
400 hours.
To break it all down, we probably spent like, what's 3 times 6? Like 18 hours. We probably spent like 18 hours at least, maybe like 16 to 18 hours on a show that was less than 6 hours.
So that's what I'm trying to say. It was pretty anticlimactic after listening to you guys, because I'm like, okay. It literally, I remember that first scene was only like, a minute long, maybe.
It's dense, though. It's dense.
But your hour description of that 1 minute.
Well, you know how it is. They flash something on a screen for 10 seconds, but in that screen are 10 minutes. In that 10 seconds are 10 minutes worth of things if you're going to describe it all verbally and what it all means. So that's a lot of fun.
So this is the thing, right? Okay. We started off with this with essentially saying mind. Okay. We're in the mind is in us, whatever.
Yeah, and then maybe it's being. As the real floor of things. But the body is always in activity. So the body in your mind, that still fits in our whole, glossary of defined terms that we've established here.
So mind for me is activity. So activity is happening. Isness is before activity. Isness sponsors activity. Without isness, you can't have action. You can't have vibration. So what my question to you is, because one of the traps that I had fallen into was actually kind of a dehumanizing trap coming from that perspective. I had that probably about 20 years ago, where I got to this real deep state of stillness. Like I could get to like the primary, the first, I should call it the primal vibration, and then be prior to that. And then I'd come out of it, and then I'd be like, all is mind. Like this is just vibration.
Life is but a dream.
And what was crazy was, for me, in a very weird way, the only way I could get there was through trust.
Well, because it's like you have to let go of it all.
I was being told by a Nani, because you have the Nani and the Bhakti. You have the two paths. The heart path is the Bhakti, which is devotion, and then you have Nani, which is knowledge. It's gnosis. And in that tradition, you're either one or the other. And I was being groomed to be a Nani. And I was a horrible Nani. But I could tune into trust. I could rest in God. I could rest. And that's the only way. Because if I activated the mind, I was just activating more activity. It was activation. It was like, ooh, I'm going to figure this shit out. And then falling back and back and back and back.
I'm definitely a Nani then, because like there are certain times where I have the epiphany and it's like the walls start going white and I'm like, oh, I'm beaming up, and then I have to like tone it down.
Well, the epiphany
it comes from like some kind of knowledge or realization.
So
it will bring it on.
So what's crazy is I can have a retrocausal nana moment, but it's always sponsored first by bhakti, devotion, like trust. So another way I could phrase it is, I've never ever touched epiphany through mistrust.
Well, that absolutely follows.
Yeah.
And the real epiphany moment is like you can't. It only works. It only has that punch of like that blooming, blossoming, huge effect if you are beyond questioning, beyond hesitation, beyond doubt. It has to come and hit you with like full-fledged, that's what it is moment. It can't be like, you can't be looking at it sideways.
So in that, we're talking about, you do these breakdowns of this media that's apparently out there.
Apparently. Allegedly it's out there.
Allegedly out there. And you interact with other people that are apparently out there. And you do, and then you read books from timelines that were apparently over there and back there. But you bring up this point that there's like this sorcerer code that's kind of a throughput line with all these things that's kind of saying, hey, your attention is the number one commodity in the universe. Just give me your attention. Would you say that's true? Would you say that's something that you found in your like sorcerer code throughput?
Who's asking for attention?
Exactly. Exactly. Who am I?
Where's the taco?
Neither of us have the sabotage right now.
Yeah, I want to know more though. Like, what are you particularly asking about in terms of the sorcerer code?
So you brought it up earlier. You said you've investigated the stuff with Dylan.
Oh, okay, like the priestcraft system.
The priestcraft, excuse me, I used the wrong. The terminology sorcerer code is the priestcraft to me.
Yeah, yeah. And sorcerer is such a loaded word. Like, it has all this negative connotation to it, but it's such a cool word because it's like the source. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but in terms of, you know, what I think the throughput of that system might be is the question of the linearity of it, you know, as an egregore or a thought form is a challenge. But you brought up ISIS, and I immediately was like, that's Jesus. Mm-hmm. And that might even sound a little crazy to people who are really indoctrinated into like the historical character of Jesus, which is fine. I don't care if people believe that. It's all good. But the mystical Jesus is so much more than that. It's externally, like one level of it externally is the Son, the Son of God, the Son, S-U-N-S-O-N, all that. And on the throne of the pole star, the North, which is an anagram for throne, that unmoved mover, everything moves around, but it is still. And then there are levels of, there are incarnations of the Savior that are before Jesus, because this is a repeating cyclical thing. They called this cycle at one point the Neros cycle. And it had always been in dispute amongst the priesthood and different sects and different places and times. How long is the cycle between incarnations or avatars of the Supreme Being? Mm-hmm. But it's so like the flood mythology. Adam and Noah are both the same consciousness mystically that is Jesus. They are different versions of him from different times, where whatever version, whatever time, it's an incarnation that's there to, in some way, correct the course that humanity is on. And I think that this has always been retroactively applied to somebody that was thought of as a great man, as a way to have a relatable people's hero, people's champion that maybe even some people still living have memory of them existing. Like some of the older generations are like, I remember Alexander the Great. He was truly great. And then the priests deify the guy. And then they say, through us, you know, we can give you his favor. And the people, the simple folk, they're like, well, I remember what it was like when we had that guy's favor. We were more wealthy. We were more abundant. Everything was better. We had good slaves, whatever the case may be. So there's like a repeating cycle of applying this title of the firstborn of the first cause, the born of a virgin. You know, even like one of the lesser known apocrypha scriptures even talks about Mary's mother, whose name was Anna, I believe, being impregnated by a serpent that crawled into her bed one day while she was like a toddler in one of the versions. Which is very bizarre and hard to wrap your head around. But then gives a virgin birth to Mary. And that's one of the things that had to be removed from the public-facing side of Christianity, because it's too much of a remnant of the other versions of this cult where it was widely understood, like Kybele, that her son Attis was also her husband, was also her. and like he becomes her as he castrates himself. So my point being that like Jesus and Mary are depicted together because Jesus is Mary. Mm-hmm. They're the same being. The Father is the Mother is the Son. You know, like Eve is Yahweh. If you take the letters Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey, depending on how you transliterate them into English, you could get YH, VH, YH, WH, you know, the ones that we associate with Yahweh. You could get IEVE out of that. How would you say that?
Eve.
Yeah, Eve. That's Eve. It means life, which is isness, it's existence. And in some of the Gnostic texts of the Nag Hammadi, Eve just explicitly says herself, the words of Eve, that she is the mother of her own self, of, you know, her father is her son, is her husband, etc. So where there may be some truth to all this, though, that I have started to come around to lately, and like to get us back to that high energy taco-free moment, is the question of, well, what would it be? Let's just work with this doctrine of emanations that this priest system is built on, and all the versions of it incorporate. That from the stillness, from the center point, from the source, whatever the creator is, the Ein Sof, the beyond, the infinite light, the pleroma that is all, and in the combination of opposites becomes a something that is a void, yet everything, you know? That the first emanation, the first ripple, the first movement of that stillness, you could think of it as the first mind to individuate and emerge out of the pleroma of the all, you know? And as a thought experiment, there's two ways of looking at it. Either everything has just always been in this state of multiplicity and fractality and apparent division, or things came, you know, there's an in-breath and an out-breath to it, like the Hindus talk about, you know, with the day of Brahm. So if there is philosophically speaking, if it was sound to think that from the still center point, the emanations begin to ripple out, and as they get further away, that those ripples become weaker in energy and more separate feeling, in a sense, less connected to God, if you will. You know, that may even account for why there were giants at one point and now people are smaller. That as the rippling of emanations.
There's entropy in material, physical systems, there's entropy.
Yeah, exactly. There's entropy. That the same overall amount of energy is in the system, but it's divided amongst more and more units. You know, so all of that explanation aside, you know, I begin to really question: is this idea of the firstborn of the first cause, which is what the title that they apply to different versions of this savior, like protogonos, like progenitor, if you will, Prometheus, Eros, lots of different names. If that's a real being, then, you know, what would that, if that's a real being, if that's a real mind out there, and it's a chicken or egg thing, like, are we creating that by our idea by our philosophy?
This is what I wanted to talk to you about.
Or is it a real entity? You know, is there really a first thing?
So, I was.
And what would it want? Like, what would its intention be? And I put myself in its shoes as best as you can imagine, something so incomprehensible. And to me, it would actually make sense that if there was a first mind born out of the source, and then all these other ripples were emanating as further branches from it, like it's the trunk of the tree, the tree of life, you know, then it probably would want to help other ripples, other beings that are emanating from it, like as if they were its children.
Yeah.
You know, it would want to help them stay in flow and stay in coherence.
Yes.
And so if that's the case, and if all other minds are branches stemming off of this one trunk, then it would be no challenge at all for it to seed and spread a system of revelation, if you will, a system of symbolism, a system of language, a way of looking at the world, a certain framework to help you see the pattern in all things. Or the pattern itself could be seeded by this thing, you know? In which case, that gets us to the you know, the fact that Jesus is the demiurge. And what? Now, not the demiurge as in like the evil boogeyman that's the reason why you're enslaved, that type of pop culture Gnosticism, but like, you know, in a lot of the writings, you know, Jesus is there before the world is created.
Yep.
You know, so how could that be? Jesus is the possibly, like, whatever this being is, this isness, this first isness that emerges out of the no thingness.
Yeah.
You know, it's the one that, it's the pattern. You know, it's the Father. The Father is the Son.
Yeah.
You know, so like philosophically, I get behind that. I actually, you know, starting to get pretty into that as an idea. I like that. But the thing is, it still smacks of the idea of externalized savior in a way. But when you really understand what I'm trying to lay down here, it's actually the deepest part of your mind or of your being that, you know, that has any form of identity or awareness or activity. You know, the only thing deeper in yourself beyond that is the pure stillness.
Right.
So it's not out there anywhere. It's like the very, very core ring of your tree of life.
It's Christ.
It's only in there.
Yes.
So hopefully that makes sense of how I'm explaining it all, but or where you wanted to go with this. But it's a wild ride. Because
one thing I appreciate is you've kind of hit this thread a few times in I probably listened to about, I'd say 80% of your podcasts.
Really? Even like old ones? Old
No,
ones?
80% were the last 2 years.
Okay, good. Don't go back older than that. No need.
And a few times you were speaking with guests and you inferred, and I'm going to put it out there, I'm projecting in this point, but you inferred that we are co-creating our future and past right now. Like it's almost like we're incepting ourselves in a way, and a lot of what we might be thinking of, like the historical narratives that we were given by we're finding over and over and over and over and over again, being in the 11th house of Pisces right now, that like almost none of those narratives actually match what quote unquote evidence that we have.
The physical evidence.
The physical evidence. Now, it could just be shenanigans. It could just be this priestcraft that has been rewriting history, and on a very material level, you know, the grabbler wants what it wants, and it wants to extort our energy from us, blah, 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 blah. I think that's kind of...
Well, you can say all that, but then you also have to get behind the grabbler wall and recognize, what has the grabbler been offering me this whole time?
A hero.
Yeah, and what does that give me? That gives me the relief of feeling like I'm floating in a void of infinite potential and uncertainty without a tether.
Right.
Which, guess what? We are.
Yeah.
That's always been the case.
Yeah.
We are on the wild frontier fringes of consciousness experiencing itself in ways that have never happened in manifestations that are brand new and novel.
So in your cosmology, what gives purpose? Is there such a thing as purpose?
I think, you know, you have to look at what's, maybe in terms of purpose, you got to look at what's foundational, fundamental. My opinion, right? So I keep it simple, that the meaning of life is life. The meaning of, and remember, life is like synonymous with what words we would use to describe our source, what does a creator do? It creates. And so if there was any meaning of life or purpose of life, it's really ultimate freedom to create and to exist. And within that, that applies to everything that you might want to do that is not in an infringement on someone else's ability to create or exist.
And that's what I was going to bring up. That's morality, essentially.
Yeah, so morality, in my opinion, is intrinsic to existence.
Yes.
And there is actually like a natural law to this place.
Yeah.
I don't want to even say this place, to existence.
Yes.
And there are mysteries about it, like, well, why do we exist in this form with these patterns, like with these 5 fingers, these hands? That's why I like guys like Marty Leeds.
Yeah.
Because
14, what?
Because he'll show you how transcendental math and number is encoded in your physical body. And that's what I mean when I was saying about like this first cause, firstborn, original entity, Jesus Demiurge, has seeded the construct with its pattern, so that anywhere you look at any given moment, if you're actually looking, thinking, feeling, hearing, whatever, tasting, it will be self-evident that pattern or that father is with you.
Yes.
And like, it's been really awesome to come to this realization as what I've been describing to you, because it's allowed me to reconcile why people, what people get out of having the Savior in their cosmology.
Yeah.
But when we can talk more about the Messiah and like why the Savior should be internal and not external, sure. And I also think that it's pure gravel, the historical narrative of a living entity that is an avatar or an incarnation of what I'm talking about. I think what I'm talking about is way beyond physical incarnation.
Okay, so let's...
Or way before primary to.
Let's go into this. So, if this is mind activity, and it's in you, or you're in it, however you want to say it, what is the priestcraft actually?
So, I think that it originates, this is all opinion, but I think it originates from people like me and Gabe and Dylan, who sat around finding the syncretic, natural emergence of a pattern and documenting it. And look, basically like synchronicity sleuths,
Yeah.
And so I think that's like the original purpose of a priestcraft.
No, I'm talking specifically about the priestcraft that created the Messiah.
Yeah, that's a different thing. And then that, man, I think they came from fucking Mars. But
You think it's alien?
I don't think Mars, alien and Aryan, same word, LR switch. But I don't think it's Mars like the red planet that is, shown to us by NASA.
So
and Mars
aliens
rover.
are Korean Aryans?
Extraterrestrial as an extra land.
Extra land.
I think that there are lands beyond the ice wall.
Beyond the globe, beyond the sphere, of course, there's like, Mercury, Venus, Mars. In our solar system, there's Jupiter and these very physical balls that
I don't understand you. What you're saying doesn't make sense.
For those of you out there, sorry, you've come across two people that are in the flat Earth cosmology, but we're apophatic about it. We're not saying.
I just know what it's not. I don't know
exactly.
what the hell it is.
Apophatic means you're a reductionist. You can say what something isn't more so than you can say what it is, and this is one of the best ways.
It's the only way to come to truth.
Yeah, it's one of the best ways to train your mind to be deductive and to reduce the noise and gain on the signal. So you're saying extraterrestrial, so extra territory.
Well, this opens up an entire other question, and I don't know if it's fair to everybody to get into that before we talk more about like what the priestcraft's purpose is with the Messiah. But I do want to go here because I want to have this conversation with you in particular, like as somebody that understands electricity, the physics of it. So you were joking before we came on and started recording earlier tonight about like, you know, that you wanted to get my cosmology,
yes,
you know, on record. And I'm not going to be explaining what I know as absolute fact or truth. And I'm open to any reason why you would dispute this idea.
Okay.
But I like this idea, and if I could just snap my fingers and pick one that was and make it true, currently I think this is the version that I would want to be true because it feels the most cool, feels most right.
Awesome.
Okay, so it is based on the idea of the electric universe and this realm being a type of self-contained alchemical battery, right? I really like to conceive of it in the egg shape,
right?
As an egg, as a giant cell, and you know, maybe even that this entire realm is one cell in the body of a being beyond our comprehension in terms of its size. I'm totally into that possibility.
Right.
You know, I think that when you shrink down to the very small, you come out at the very big. You know, I think that there's like a weird Mobius loop to dimension. When I say dimension, I don't mean like parallel universes. I mean dimension as in scales.
Yes.
Reference point, where a dimension of scale, we're at a dimension of scale right now, and then there's lots of in-between liminal space as you shrink down or get bigger, right? But definitely things have a self-similar pattern across scale. So if this is an alchemical egg battery thing, right? The sun and moon being cathode and anode and having something to do with generating or circulating the charge through this closed system, that I see it as interesting to consider the possibility of the charge in the battery getting low over time.
Yes.
Because that's what happens to batteries.
Yeah, that'd be the Kali Yuga.
And exactly. And there's reason to think that that's the case because you have winter, you know, you have nighttime. So if you apply, if nighttime is the small cycle and winter is the big cycle, and then the world ages would be the epic cycle.
Right.
And so it's perfectly reasonable to think that that's possible.
Definitely.
You know, and like I think that's part of why this pattern, that's an element of the whole pattern of nature, the fractal pattern of things coming from potentially, you know, Jesus, Daddy, Demiurge, that it's there so that we can understand our place in things by looking at our version of it and then assuming, well, there must be a bigger and a smaller and a bigger than that and a smaller than that, but that it would operate in the same order. You know, that's Ma'at, that's math. There's order of operations to things. You put the pole in the hole and then you wait 9 months and then you have new life. And then that baby becomes a child and that becomes a man and that becomes an old person, you know. And so getting back to the whole cosmology of it, you have an aqua cure, right? You have George Wiseman's aqua cure?
I have one of his competitors' machines.
How dare you? Well, good though.
But I understand how it works, yes.
Okay, so the aqua cure is this device that does electrolysis to generate hydrogen and bubble it through water, giving you electrically available hydrogen to drink or to inhale. And in the process of this electrolysis, the AquaCure creates a sludge internally to the machine. And the sludge seems to come out of nowhere. That it wasn't anything that was present in the water that went in. The componentry of the sludge, like in terms of the molecular makeup of it, is actually the same elemental ratios as the stainless steel plates that are used internally in the device to create the electrolysis. So George has done experiments where he's weighed the sludge that's come out of a machine and then weighed the plates, and the stainless steel plates lost no weight.
Right.
But he had like a measurable weight of sludge that came out of it.
Right.
And obviously stainless steel in that density or sludge that is made up of the same molecules as stainless steel is not just hanging out in the atmosphere somehow being sucked into the device and congealed into sludge. So it's a big clue.
Yes.
That machine is a huge clue about what could possibly be going on here in the realm.
Yes.
Okay, so electrolysis is something that you can use to recharge a battery. It's so when God plugs us in, or whenever the Great Reset needs to occur, when the battery is low, the Kali Yuga, what have you. To me, it makes sense, and it's very possible, because the mythos of the flood is not just Noah and his ark. There were, allegedly, there's a cycle, and it's on a schedule, that a flood will happen every certain increment of years. How often? That's another thing that's disputed amongst the various branches of the priesthood over the eons. But, the Orlinda, for example, talks about more than one flood, which to me was one of the reasons why I found it interesting, and I plan to cover it more in the future. So we also have the phenomenon of the mud flood.
Right.
And you and I were talking about, as we were in downtown Springfield tonight, where I live, how there's all this old red brick architecture in the downtown area, and there's evidence of the mud flood in the sense that like the bottom floors of these buildings have partially buried windows and bricked up doorways that go to nowhere, that just go to ground. There's an entire underground network of tunnels and buildings below this city for no reason. And so people are probably familiar enough with what I'm talking about with mud flood, generally speaking, that I can leave it there. But what I'm describing, is beyond just our downtown area or your downtown area where you see that type of architectural bizarreness. Think of the mystery of Göbekli Tepe.
Right.
The
largest pyramid known.
And it was completely buried.
Right.
Yeah. And the question everyone always asks is, why would they bury that? And I'm thinking, like, why would they bury that? Maybe there was some natural process that buried it. And then that's not even accounting for the possibility of whatever this recharge event is, potentially sending vibration into the ground, causing the liquefaction effect that would make things just sink into the dirt of their own accord.
So for those of you out there that don't know, liquefaction is when the ground oscillates at a certain vibration. I should say it vibrates, it doesn't oscillate. But it vibrates to a point where denser materials drop and lighter materials rise. So you can have essentially something that's considered a solid become a fluid. And it's a fluid that is almost acting like quicksand. Anything that's denser above will drop into it. And there's if you have a chance to watch any of the videos from Christchurch, I think in 2010 or 11, New Zealand, where they had an earthquake and there were multiple videos of liquefaction of cars, liquefaction of the ground, but you see cars essentially drop in, you see buildings drop. I got to see it in Costa Rica in 2007, a couple liquefaction events in my neighborhood, and it was nuts because things that were very well built just ended up being down in the ground. It's just like, what just happened? And so this is something that obviously has happened a bunch.
Exactly. So there's that effect. And then the other thing about the AquaCure and similar devices is the potential for the generation of new water.
Yes.
So we have a known effect that generates potentially new water and new earth.
Yes.
Because I know I've been calling it sludge with the AquaCure, but if the plate in the device of the giant alchemical battery that is our realm is the earth itself, not a stainless steel plate, then and assuming that this electrolysis process will generate more of whatever it is that is its medium, then new water and new earth could be, when, for the metaphor, when God plugs it in, like the earth grows,
So here's so I have a ton of experience when it comes to taking an old battery and reclaiming it. So batteries or capacitors work the same way in a lot of respects. There's usually an electrolyte and there's plates in it. And over time, they call it electrons, but let's just say the energy density gets less and less and less and less because the energy from one side of the plate can't get to the other side of the plate. So they found a way to actually reclaim batteries was to use something known as back EMF. And I had these units, I did this professionally for a while, where it was developed by a gentleman named John Bedini, but it's actually how nature does it. He just figured out exactly how nature does it. So it's electrical cavitation, essentially, is what he was creating. Because in nature, whenever you create a gap, like you create a flow of energy going in one direction, whether that flow of energy is water, whether it's air, whether it's a current of electricity, if you abruptly stop it, nature abhors a vacuum. It's like it is essentially an axiomatic thing in this hologram. You stop or truncate the flow of anything, that gap that occurs is immediately filled.
Yeah, there's the suction is violent.
Right. And the thing is in nature, that implosive energy, that collapse that occurs trying to fill that gap. Because the signal, the way you could look at it is this: you're signaling, you're sending a signal, and then you truncate the signal. Well, your surroundings are like, no, there's supposed to be a signal there, and it fills it. You've already intimated that this is doing this, and now you stop it? No. And so with the whole weight of the mind, let's just say the entire mind collapses to fill that information gap right there. That's the way I look at nature abhors a vacuum. It's the mind collapsing. Wait, there's a lack of vibration. There's a lack of information. Boom. You get a collapse. And in that collapse, you get new earth. You get new water. You get more electricity. Because mind or energy is primary. Material is secondary. It's always the secondary effect to the more subtle energies. And so with electricity is this fun thing that we play with, these fields that
I think it has to do with the fear, like the primal, you can look at it as fear or love, but like either the fear of non-existence, so like, oh, no, not void, nuh-uh, we can't have that, or the love of expression and, filling every bit of the white of the canvas with some kind of color and design.
I don't think it's fear at all, because if you think about it, now we're getting super abstract. In materiality, in phenomenon, we're in the field of phenomenon. Phenomenon, baby.
Yeah.
So in phenomenon, hey man, let's keep the party going.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's the love side too.
Yeah.
But with these things, you could look at it either way, the motivation.
Yeah.
Oddly enough. But, okay, to continue, I'm glad you had so much to back up what I was saying, and please extrapolate on anything that I add to this. But,
yes.
What we're talking about may describe this greater cycle of golden, silver, bronze, iron ages and the event that seems to bury stuff that accompanies the end of a fallen, the last part of the age. You know, and that's just baked in to keeping this wheel turning. Another thing I like about the Orlinda is that they call the supreme deity, or the source and originator of all existence, which they call Ralda. They describe it as a wheel that continues to turn no matter what. And I also like that because, you know, basically it says that the only life that's actually being lived is Ralda's life, or is the Supreme Being's life. Everything else is an emergence of phenomena that come and go as that wheel turns. You know, and another element of the priest system is that in the, like, why this doctrine or dogma of the world ages and the destruction and regeneration is necessary is because it would mean God made a mistake if something emerged into the world of phenomenon and then went away and never came back. So the belief is that, like, everything that has ever happened, including us sitting here having this conversation, in a future age will happen exactly like this. Because otherwise it would be imperfect or a mistake. And, you know, and I've had experiences. I
don't actually believe that, because some of the most beautiful art I've ever seen.
I'm not saying I believe it either. I'm saying that this is a subsect of the priest dogma. Not probably all of them would agree with this, but this is something that's believed. And my interpretation on that is that if if there are some out there that believe that, it would make sense as to informing why some beings choose to accelerate the path of destruction for the whole world.
Yeah.
The idea being maybe like they think they're saving the world by destroying it, because if they undo it all, then it will eventually, it'll fast forward the regeneration, and it'll bring back what was lost up to that point. You know, so burn it down to rebuild it, type of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that there's uniqueness and novelty is actually the true and obvious, self-evident fingerprint of nature. Yeah, there's 10 trillion oak trees in the world, but show me two that are identical in the way that their branches and leaves have grown. Nuh-uh. Every single one is unique.
Yeah.
And that's I don't know how you can look at a world where everything that is perfectly unique and think that, yeah, it's all going to happen exactly like this again.
No.
Well, otherwise, God made a mistake. You know, I'm with you. Like, that, to me, that's not logical. And that's what I like about philosophy, and what gets lost in religion is how philosophy is meant to be you using logic and reason to deduce things that maybe, you know, that you can potentially work with as axioms or fundamentals of truth, based on whether or not there's evidence in the natural world that supports that as a part of the pattern. You know, and that's not how it operates for religion nowadays. But, you know, that's what makes it fun. That's why I like biofield tuning as well. Like, one of the reasons that I keep going back to, you know, I'll keep offering sessions to clients to tune up their energy field, is because every client, every session is like a puzzle. I'm getting to solve a mystery.
Yeah.
Like, how did this get like this? You know? And that's so much fun. It's so rewarding that every time I'm like, okay, new puzzle. What's the next one? It's like next level. It's like a game, you know? So I love that about it. We're getting a little off base, though. You know, you wanted my big grand cosmology, right?
Well, yeah, there's a few things that you're touching. Like, there was a little taco that slipped in there that kind of maneuvered us off course here, because you were going somewhere with the electric analogy. You were just about to go down the electric universe analogy. You're talking about this new creation and sort of this being like the alchemical battery cell. We kind of live in the alchemical battery cell. Did you fully explain that aspect of what you were trying to?
Well, I think there's more to it. Yeah, I think if we go along with this thought experiment, then, and we think about what we can see in the world, what is the North Pole? What is the South Pole? And the North Pole, like what I enjoy as a cosmology possibility is that, because there's what stands out in the heavens, what sets itself apart is different in the sky.
It doesn't move, the North Pole.
No, okay, but that's true. But like beyond the North Pole, beyond the sun and the moon, what's the outlier in terms of the little dots of light in the sky?
The wandering stars, the luminaries that aren't part of the bigger pattern.
Yeah, what we call planets.
Right.
Right. And they have a cyclical pattern, but it's more tricky.
Right.
And it's more complicated.
Right.
Okay. So what if this electrolysis, recharge, reset event causing new earth and new water to be generated, what if that, in a way, pushes the land out from a center point? Mm-hmm. What if there's a point where this is all emerging out of? Mm-hmm. And what that would it makes sense if that was the center. And maybe what if what is generating that energy is something dividing, like mitosis, like a cellular division, right? Or multiplication. It's not division. Nature doesn't divide, it only multiplies, right? Division is a complete construct and an abstraction that has no basis in reality.
Yeah.
Like, think about that one. Division is fake news. It's only multiplication and addition and subtraction.
Fake math news.
Yeah. But if the North Pole, the center point, new earth and water emerges from there, what if the reason why we can't go to the North Pole is because it's a highly charged, hydrogenated, electrified atmosphere where life and consciousness is so powerful that anybody that went there would be, transcend beyond the limitations that are going on in our world right now based on the controllers' whims that are, managing the North Pole. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of what ifs. There's a big run-on.
But that's actually the cosmology of people that had mastered, for lack of a better term, physics. Like, you can only get to a place if you're in a resonant frequency with it.
Frequency is location.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So think about it. I'll speak for myself. I'm not at a resonant frequency to be able to handle that amplitude of energy.
Yeah, because you can think of the North Pole as the spine of the world. If North is the center, then, the pole star being at the top, you can imagine that as like a column of energy, the way the spine in your body contains the chakras.
Like you're at exactly where you can handle.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true in all levels.
Yeah, like
in all things.
Like my grandfather used to test people for these like very fast jets. He used to test jet pilots, and they would look at the genetics of it and all this stuff. And he was emphatic, like, this genetic type can't handle, above Mach 2. They just can't. That's just the way it is.
And then epigenetics suggests how that, based on your level of coherence and belief systems, that the genes can change what they're doing.
Absolutely. And this is the whole, path of Raja Yoga. This was like my teachers in yoga were Raja Yogis. And that was the path of actual developing siddhas or siddhis. And that whole thing was an epigenetic, like, you go into it knowing that your body in this day and age, in the Kali Yuga, it has its limitations, but it's just the physical aspect of yourself. Your mind, your sentience is so much greater than that. And then you would just work on the discipline of focus. And that discipline of focus is actually what brought to you power, because focus and power are the same thing. And so,
Yeah, think of what happens when you focus a sunbeam through a magnifying lens into a single point.
exactly.
It becomes
Yeah.
very powerful.
And the strongest energies that we know of right now, at least that are in the public domain, are called point source energy flows. That's literally what they are. It's point source energy. Like if you look at what a laser is, it's a point source energy.
Yeah, so think again about the North Pole, the pole star.
Exactly. So would you have, in your analogy, if you had this column, this spine of
Mount
just
Meru.
Mount Meru, exactly. You know, the black magnetic, you know, center mountain of energy, because anything that would be of enormity could be said symbolically as like a mountain, like a huge mountain.
Yeah, and the world center, world axis is usually depicted as a mountain or a tree. But
Right.
it's the trunk of the tree is another way to conceive of it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think in that place, being that close to the center, that you would have, instead of a day and night cycle and duality, that would be like the point of alchemical wedding between the two, if you will. So think of it as what we consider the luminary Mercury. You know, what if it is a simultaneous sun and moon for the realm, the northern realm? Obviously, there's a lot of problems with that idea. Like the way that Mercury seems to follow our sun around. So maybe that's not true.
Yeah.
Like you would need astronomy to back up what I'm saying with that. But that idea is like the rest of this idea is not predicated on that part being accurate, right?
I want to,
But the thing is, if there's a ring land at the North Pole, then beyond the south, which is not a pole, but beyond the ice wall
The ring.
that is Antarctica, you know, what if there's a land that is further out than that got pushed out when the last one of these cycles occurred and the Earth grew? In which case, they're further from the source, which would make any life forms at that realm be more aggressively predatory in a way. You know what I mean? Like, because that's sort of the nature of scarcity systems brings out predatory behavior. Scarcity and predators and victims is like related to energetic scarcity. And I think, you know, like leaving aside whether or not it's even possible that the luminary we call Mercury could be the simultaneous sun and moon or just single light point source for the northern realm. Leaving that aside, because they don't both have, this doesn't have to be accurate for both things. I think it's really interesting to consider a ring land beyond ours where their sun is the luminary we call Mars, and their moon is the luminary we call Venus, because Venus actually does a phasing pattern the way that our Luna does. Why is that? You know? And so and this is all circling back around to what you asked about, like the priest, the parasitic priest class. And I like to think, I'm not saying I know this, but I think it's really interesting to consider what if the Jews, you know, not like all people who identify with Judaism, but like the crypto Jews, the cryptocracy, the holy sailors,
the Grabbler.
The Grabbler, yeah. And what if the Grabbler actually originates, you know, the chosen special boys actually originate from the ring land outside or beyond ours, and that is informing their biology in a way that their behavior is based on, you know?
Is that why they clip the tip? The ring of honor?
And then, you know, following this thought experiment further, you could even consider possibly a further out ring from that, where maybe the moon is Saturn and the sun is Jupiter. Especially understanding that Mars and Jupiter and Saturn, these things were all names for the sun at one point.
Right.
So was Mercury. So that's I'm not saying that cosmology is true or doesn't have holes in it or that it couldn't be improved upon, but that's the most fun one to me. I find that one to be really fun and interesting. And there's like things about it that just resonate with me, and it's always stuck with me, especially later on when I learned about the electrolysis, new water and sludge, and I was like, oh, there's even a mechanism in physics that we can replicate with machinery to explain the expanding ring pattern nature of our potentially of our realm.
So this is a lot of fun, okay? Because have you ever heard of what scalar north is?
No, scalar north. No.
Yeah. So whenever you take two magnets, let's see, I'll use this. Can I use this as an example?
Be gentle, it's old.
Okay.
Charlie Bubsbear gave me that at Bertaria. It's an 1840 Greek New Testament.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It's in ancient Greek. And check out, Jesus is on an anchor instead of a cross.
What?
Yeah.
And is that a crescent moon at the bottom?
This is a crescent moon with Mary and Jesus on the back. Yeah. 1840s Greek Bible in ancient Greek alphabet, not the modern.
But that was only 200 years ago. It's not like
I know, that's pretty different symbolism.
It's not even like things change that much in 200 years.
Well, that's why I think we've got a lot of I think the mistake
Lucy, got a lot of explaining to do.
I think it's around that time. I think it's around 1850 that
I'm in total agreement.
That things started to get all mixed up.
Oh my goodness.
I think up till about then, people had a better idea of what had really happened in the past.
I'm in total agreement with you. So getting back to scalar north, say this is a north pole on a magnet. Say these are both magnets. And the binding right here in the book is north pole, and this is north pole. If you press them together, then you get scalar north would be above them.
If you put two norths together?
Yeah.
But doesn't that take a lot of energy to put the two norths together?
So check this out. It does in this analogy, right? But one of the things that drew me to flat Earth so much was if you do the same thing with a ring magnet, if this is radially centered, where the outside is the south and the inside is north, dead center above becomes scalar north.
Wow.
That's exactly where Polaris would be. So I worked for 10 years on a water purification system with radially centered ring magnets. I poured every extra dollar I had into buying magnets, having engineers make radially centered ring magnets, because there's a really fun thing that happens when you send water through a magnet that's radially centered. And this scalar north, if this is in a it doesn't even have to be highly charged. If this is in a static field, scalar north illuminates.
Whoa.
That becomes the center of plasma. That's our pole star.
You think it's a plasma ball?
It's a plasma ball. Especially because I don't know what we're in, but it makes sense. I've interviewed people that have gone to the South Pole, run expeditions yearly, over and over and over and over again. With what they explain, they're only allowed to go to two places. They're never allowed to go more than 2 kilometers inland. And when they do go inland, they have to be with a military escort. And usually those trips get cut short. And they're only allowed to go in for 2 hours. What can you do? And then the boat that they're on, the boat that they charter, always has military personnel on it.
Yeah, and good luck going to the North Pole.
Right.
Nobody's going there.
So I know, if we've been lied to about our history, we've been lied to about with the maps. Just in my lifetime, seeing how big Cuba has gotten relative to Florida, seeing how South America is actually Southeast America. All these changes to the maps, and nobody wants to talk about it.
Andelu.
Yeah.
Andelu.
Dude, I just think it's just, this priestcraft, people. I think a lot of times they're gauging and just to see like, okay, who's paying attention? What can we actually get away with? What can we actually just put in the public domain and see who's going to run with it? Like, who is going to always appeal to authority? Because
who's going to share pictures of Hunter Biden's dick?
Because to me, like, literally, I mean, as a kid, I mapped hurricanes with my father growing up in South Florida. Cuba was like this big.
On the map.
On the map.
Yeah.
Now Cuba, when you look at it, it's like the Cuba is almost touching the Yucatan Peninsula. When I was a kid, you had Florida like this, and then you had Cuba like down here like this.
I remember.
You had the Bahamas over here.
South America was like centered under the North America.
South America is down here. And then, because I remember I had so many friends that were Venezuelan and Colombian. And when they would fly from Florida, they were flying southwest. Now you're flying due south, and you'll hit, like from Florida, you essentially hit Colombia, the Colombia-Venezuela border. Mind-blowing. And the Panama Canal wasn't a north-south canal when I was growing up. It was east-west.
So what do you think is going on with that?
Well, one, I think this is the real thing I wanted to get to you. This is the thing that you've alluded to in the past because I think this is much more of a malleable existence than we think.
Yeah.
Like, I really think our consciousness really is kind of making this whole thing go.
Yeah, it's a giant dream.
And it's all right now.
The only thing is the right now part.
It's right now.
Yeah. You ever heard of psychic archaeology?
No.
It's basically where people only find the type of artifacts and things.
You told me about this with your dad, right?
That fit what they think should be there. There's that element to it. And so, like, once a new discovery or a new theory is made about, like, some ancient culture that has archaeologists looking into it, then all of a sudden artifacts start showing up that support that idea or that perspective. So there's two possibilities. There's a possibility that the past is just as malleable from the present moment as the future is, or there's the possibility that forgers come up with ideas that fit what everyone think they should find because they're forging. Or there's both things happening parallel to each other.
I think there's both, but I think there is credence to the first more so than the second.
Well, I think that I don't know about more so, but I think there's credence to the first for sure.
Dude, come on. Like, so there are, and I always...
The field of archaeology is so notoriously rife with forgery and fakery that, because think of the frustration of going, like, especially in the late 1800s, early 19th century is where it got really, really ugly in terms of people faking discoveries. I mean, dinosaurs.
Yeah.
The whole thing, that's so big. How many people had to intentionally fake something,
and just ride the gravy train?
And just ride the gravy train. It's
sort of like with, the Baca.
Baca?
Yeah, the vacuna. Vaccine.
Oh, cowpoke.
Yeah.
Cowpoke. Okay.
Sorry, I'm going to Costa Rica tomorrow, so my mind's on Spanish. So there's so many people who know it's fake, but they're riding the gravy train.
Yeah.
And history will write it as if it was real.
Yeah. And then there's the element of psychic archaeology is just somebody able to intuit where they're going to find something.
I'm going one step further.
What my dad's got. Did you find any treasure with
I haven't looked yet.
Okay.
I'm going one step further. Did the person actually create it with their mind? So we were talking earlier about...
Well, there's definitely cities that have been demonstrated by holy men where they can, like, apparate coins into their hands.
I've seen it on a physical level. I've seen it with people healing things. like through their ancestral line. How is that possible unless this time that we're actually present in is actually the center of the wheel, you know, the 6-pointed wheel that you're talking about in the Oralinda? That is us. We are the wheel. And it goes backward, forward, it goes in all directions. It actually does look like an egg because the male counterpart's on top. The lancet arch part of the egg is vertical and the mother is horizontal. That's the egg. And so it's all one. And we're in the wheel. Our heart is actually the pure center. The edge of the wheel is the horizon. And we have these inputs from other aspects, other wheels, but all the wheels are a wheel within a wheel within a wheel. And these aspects, we play off each other, and then there's this epiphany that goes on, and this excitement, and then we are made in the image and likeness of the Creator. Boom, creation. Oh, I just ended up finding this book that corresponds to this feeling that came, you know, dude, I really think there's an aspect of that.
Like the time that me and my roommate in college really needed a new grinder for our weed, but we didn't have any money, but we decided to just go walk to the weed store to check them out. And on the way there, we found $20 on the sidewalk, which is exactly how much we needed to get a good grinder.
Perfect. Yeah, and so...
But I mean, that's a true story, you know?
You get into the philosophical implications of it, because I always go, God gives me my desires.
Yeah. That's why I really like the book, The Never-Ending Story. Because the theme of that book is that be careful what you wish for. Because everything you wish for will come true.
Right.
This is the realm where wishes come true.
Right.
But the more that you wish for things that are not what you truly want or aligned with who you truly are, as those wishes come true, the more distance, difficulty, and pain there is between you and knowing yourself.
Absolutely.
To the point where, you know, and that's why I think some of these people who wished for ultimate power, ultimate status, ultimate fame, and got there, have gotten so off track from their spirit.
And this gets back
because they wish for things that aren't really them, that aren't really their true desire.
And I think that's what we should end on, because that's actually where we started, is the authentic self. Like the true authentic, like who am I? Like this aspect of us where we apparently have the outside inputs. And we then give authority, we externalize authority, we idolize, like, you know, there's reasons why, you know, those first 10 commandments actually have a lot of power. Is because, like, the second you idolize or you externalize an authority out there, you're away from the center, you're away from home. Then you start doing things and you start pretending to be something that you're not. And like you said...
Away from home is a good way of putting it, because like people in that state literally spend 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week, not at home.
Right.
And like what we all really want is to be most of the time at home with our families, with our wives, our children, our husbands.
Right.
And, you know, not that we don't want to be productive and crush and like make great things, but the major heartache of the world is that feeling of distance and separation from that which they love the most, or that which brings them the most joy and coherence, or like that which their hopes and dreams are invested in, their kids. So,
and this gets back to what you're talking about.
This is why our lives are so good, is we actually get to spend our life with our wives.
Yes.
We're actually together most of the day, all day.
Yes, absolutely.
Or like, you know, in each other's vicinity. It's not like we need to be all attached at the hip and like clingy, but to just be able to float into the room where the other one is at and be like, there you are, right where I left you, and like not have all this, you know, away from the center, away from home. I just like how you put that, because it manifests in a literal sense for people where they get, you know, they have to spend all this time somewhere that's not home, that doesn't feel good to be there.
Mm-hmm. And then getting back to like the larger macro side of it, like you're talking about, if this realm that we're in, this plane of inertia that we're on actually expands out from the center. And you could say center is our highest capacitance self, our highest resonant frequency with the pure creator. And then those that are out on the perimeter, that are pushed out to the perimeter, pushed away from home, that feeling of separation, end up being predatory. That actually fits that.
Yeah.
That fits that model.
Yeah, that's why I like that model, because there's things about it that just have this fractal resonance of truth to it. I'm definitely open to working the model and improving it, but I like it a lot. I also want to put out there that, you know, the closer you get to center, the more all of the multiplicity collapses down into singularity, right? So I'm saying this because I don't want people to feel like they're listening, there's something wrong with me that I'm not in the pure center. Actually, it's like wherever you're at right now, you're there because this is what is most fun and interesting and exciting to you. Even if you can't quite see why that is, or it's leading you to what is most fun, interesting, and exciting. So my point being, like, embrace the place of whatever level of separation and difference you find yourself.
That's so good because
there's collapsing down into pure stillness and singularity. I think the reason we don't just hang out there eternally is because the story isn't complex and novel enough for our eternity.
Right.
That's why we have to have this sine wave of ages, so that we can experience the rising action, the climax, and the falling action.
Yeah, and
which is a storytelling.
I mean, I've been humbled by life, and I know that I don't know what's best for me. And this is the beautiful thing about trust. Like, I know God knows what's best for me. And every time I've had the capacity to trust that and really let go, because I think I know what's best for me. But I've seen two things define my life more than anything. One is outlying events, like pure surprises. Things I never saw coming have completely shaped my life. Then I read Nassim Taleb's book, Black Swan. And that whole book is about how society is absolutely shaped by black swan events. Like 9/11. Today we're recording this on 9/11.
Yeah, happy 9/11, everybody.
Yeah, 9/11. It was a black swan event. None of us saw it coming, but yet it changed everything after that.
I tuned a guy that had 9/11 in his field pretty strong.
Yeah.
And as we were working through that, he was telling me about how he actually, he felt it coming.
Oh, really?
I think he was in New York or New Jersey or something. So he had proximity to where it was going to happen. But I know most of us didn't see it coming, but there is, animals detect the earthquake about to occur.
Oh,
you know what I mean? So I think some people were feeling the winds change before it happened. But nobody saw it coming. I'm not disputing that. But it's just interesting how, again, back to that retrocausality thing, it's like the stone fell in the pond before the ripples got to where you're at in the pond.
Right.
So some people heard the kerplunk.
Yeah.
They're like, what was that? And then the ripple gets to them.
Yeah, that's a great way of saying it. What I'm saying is, with an outlier event, and this is the way Nassim Taleb put it, is that an outlier event, all the details of life change. You might have had a premonition that such and such was going to happen, but you had no idea that now you had to go through TSA, that you have to
get a hand up your butt.
Yeah, all these things. These outlier events occur, and it's just like, oh, things are different now. At least from an externalized perspective, they're different. And so between knowing that surprise is completely, I'm still writing this essay. It's 12 years now of writing this essay on surprises. Surprises are absolutely amazing because they're so humbling. If I knew what was best for me, then I would know, okay, if I do this, then the best result would occur.
It makes me think of the law of surprise. Have you heard of this?
No.
It's something that I believe it's an element of really old European folklore tradition, and it's played with as a story element in the Witcher books, which are awesome books. Show is super gay, some cool things about it, but the books are where it's at. In the law of surprise, this is something that when witchers are hired to slay a monster, and the folk that hired them don't have coin to pay the fee, the witcher may invoke the law of surprise, which is when you return home, you will give me that which you find there but did not expect. So, they're leaving it up to like, what's best for me? I don't know. I don't know what to ask for. But, and I'm not taking something that they knew they had, taking something that they're not going to miss as much because they didn't know they had it. But also one of the reasons they do it is because sometimes they get a child that way.
Yeah.
Because the witchers are sterilized by their whole like alchemical mutations to make them supermen. And that's the way that they can get away with like, taking new children to train. But the idea though of like, imagine if that's how we asked each other for compensation. Give me that which you find at home but did not expect.
I lived for 3 years with no money, strictly going on a value for value thing.
Yeah.
That's all. That's actually the moment in my life. It was during my Saturn return, and that's when I actually started to really trust. I saw the more that I let go of all my preconceptions and
you would be provided for no matter what.
No matter what. And
even if you were fucking up.
And I found myself living oceanside in Central America, driving this G-Wagon, watching over this incredible estate, getting paid to do it. And it was literally like you couldn't be just a normal millionaire to have that life. And I was just in it because I trusted and I was trustworthy.
Yeah, and it just falls into you. You fall into it. Falls into your lap.
And so
that's awesome. I want to hear more about that phase of your life sometime.
Oh, dude, when I lost
Every time we talk, there's more nuance to the Topher verse. It's so awesome.
It's very, very weird.
It's rewarding to be a regular listener to your stuff, whether you're appearing on things or interviewing. It's always fun.
Well, dude, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I'm glad I've gotten to know you at a deeper level. I love your podcast. It's one of 3 that I listen to every week. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing. And
thanks, man. Yours is one of the few on my rotation as well.
Yeah.
And
where can people check out your stuff?
I just want to say I think that being able to do this in person brought a vibe to it.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
I think it was your tea, dude. I think he slipped me a Mickey in the tea.
Blue Lotus Mickey. Yeah, thank you for that Blue Lotus, Kyle. If you listen to this, Typical New Herbs. Have you had him on?
I've elicited many requests, and
you'll get him.
Yeah, he's like, oh, I'm always on this guy Chance's podcast, and I don't have enough time.
That's not true.
No.
That is definitely not true.
No, I have him and Mario coming on pretty soon here. They're in the queue.
Nice. Mario's also a great gentleman and a scholar. But yeah, people can find me at InnerVersePodcast.com. And from that website, there's a shop tab where you can find the sound healing offering too.
Ooh.
That's, on a lot of times when I'm being interviewed on a show for the first time on that show, I like to really go deep into the mechanics of biofield anatomy and using sound and intention to clear stuck energy to improve our health. That being said, we didn't go into that in this conversation, and that's just not the way of things, with the Topher conversation anyway.
It meanders.
But why I'm saying that is because if people want to find out more, they can go to the sound healing tab on my site and get some content there, some videos where I explain it in presentation form. And if they just know that they'd like to book with me, there's instructions there on how to do that. But I want, you're very, the bear community is very dialed into you. You've made yourself quite available to them, and they see you as Squirts Inside Himself Bear. You're a legend.
Do you know my new bear name? It's the best bear name ever.
Hold on, let me see if I can guess. Okay, go ahead.
Char Char Binks Bear. Yeah. Char Char Binks.
Did this chip off of my
It just
celestite?
it fell off.
Nice. Maybe we should find something to do with that.
Nice.
I always look at it like when a crystal has like a flaking moment or a breaking moment, it's something letting go or being released. There's a release. But yeah, I want the bear community to know more about tuning, because I want, in the parallel society that they're building, that is emerging out of the bears. I think a lot of them are always on the lookout for ways that they can bring value to each other.
Yes.
And ways that they can provide a service that will allow them to receive service, in all the trades that are possible.
Yes.
And so I think the bear community would be really well served by more of them learning about the biofield anatomy and how to work with it in a professional way like I do, but also just like, there's so many parents out there that if they had a working knowledge of the biofield, or just the wisdom to have it as a reference, that when their kids get fall and hurt their knee, that they can have the conversation with their son or daughter, what do you feel like is a challenge or an obstacle in your life right now that you're having trouble getting past or getting over? If they hurt their right knee, that there's a message in every part of our body, and every injury or disease is a message from our body about where we're stuck mentally or emotionally.
That's huge.
And parents with that knowledge, that's going to actually help you as a parent protect your children from ever having such earthquake type events in their life because of their own confusion or denial, the child, that they get seriously hurt. And so I truly think that with this, equipped with this knowledge, you will it's preventative medicine.
Definitely.
Because I'm sure you've noticed this, that when you're out of sync, out of flow in some way, first you stub your toe, then you get into a small fender bender, just scrape your car on someone else's car, then your house burns down.
Right.
Not in that order, but things, whenever God has to start putting the pain on you to help you break out of your denial, it comes in more and more severe vibrations.
Definitely.
And with the knowledge, it starts in the body though. It's always got something going on related to it in the body. And so that's why a lot of times the bigger vibrations that come cause bodily harm, injury, and death.
Definitely.
So I'm saying though that if you parents out there knew about the biofield anatomy, how to use tuning forks and as well, but just the knowledge of the anatomy of your energy field would be huge. Then you can help your children understand the message their body is sending them whenever they're stuck in some way. Help based on how they got hurt or what happened with them, where they're stuck in some way, and you can be their guide through that. And do you recognize the gravity, of what I'm saying here, the importance of what I'm saying here, how different this could make, how much this could improve parenting for people?
Yeah, definitely.
It's huge. So I want bears to know about it. So please come check out my site, learn about biofield tuning, or just check out podcast episodes that you think look good for any gravy. And I'll stop talking now, but it's been a really fun chat.
Yes, and if you guys appreciate today's podcast, I always say reciprocate if you appreciate at topherhq.com. I'm going to have a store up pretty soon on there where I'm selling all of my different wares, all the good stuff. And check out Chance's work whenever you get a chance. That's something kind of funny. And yeah, thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon.